Hi everyone. Hope you've enjoyed these past 2 days, and I sure hope you're keeping warm, because it's cold outside. So, today we're going to work as though we're in class. I have recorded this lesson, or I am recording this lesson, and you will need to take notes. After you are done, be sure to upload these notes. The upload is in the week of February 16th through 20th. This is nothing new. Remember to place your notes in Adobe Acrobat and save before you complete your notes. That way you don't have to redo. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so as you can see right now, we are looking at a picture of the Ottoman Empire. And in fact, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about imperialism and the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is an area that includes, but not limited to, this group of countries that you see right here. It includes Israel and Egypt and Yemen and Bosnia and Tunisia and, oh, I put Bosnia twice, lucky me, Saudi Arabia. In other words, this has to do a lot with area that is known as the Middle East. It's not limited to that, but that whole area. You're going to see a map of this here in a few minutes. All right. Okay, so imperialism and the Ottoman Empire. Here's our targets for today. We're going to identify the different types of colonial rule. We're going to define nationalism and its impact on imperialism and the world. We're going to explain the problems of the Ottoman Empire faced. And then we're also going to describe how Egypt sought to modernize. Now let me say before we go any further here, I am going to continue on and I'm not going to worry about you catching up and writing. What you need to do is, if you come along to this recording, you'll need to pause it and then fill in your words and then continue on. And that way you can fill in the blanks at your leisure. All right? So we're going to go on after the targets. That's what we're shooting for today. All right, here's a map, and I think it's worth our time to spend a few moments looking at the map. This is the map of Europe, and remember, these are the countries that are going out and gathering into themselves these colonies or these areas for control. All right, so you can see here, pull this over so you can see a little better, the United Kingdom, which has changed its name from England, is now United Kingdom of Great Britain. The reason they did this, their colonies had grown so large that they decided to change their name to include all of these as a United Kingdom, and then call themselves, of course, then Great Britain. You can still call it England, that's not a problem. It's just they have these two names. England is the traditional name, United Kingdom of Great Britain is the new name. All right, Denmark still exists, Netherlands, Belgium, as you can see right through here, France, Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, Italy. These areas have not changed much. The change has occurred here in Germany, well, what is now Germany. This is known as, at this point in time, as the German Empire. They have united in part with Austria and to create then this German Empire. Other parts of Austria have united with Hungary, and this small empire is now controlled by one family, an Austrian family, and so this is known as the Austrian Empire. The Austrian Empire actually did scroll down into this area here, and so had gathered up some land from these areas here out of the Ottoman Empire. Okay, you see Russia here. And then this area, I'm coming back to this. This area right here will be known as the Balkans. Now the Balkans will be the area that World War I will start from. What happens in this area is what sets the world into a world war. And so we'll talk more about this. It is a powder keg of nationalism. We'll talk more about nationalism here in just a second. And then you start to see Ottoman Empire here, although this is only a small portion. We'll look at it further on another map. Before we go too far, though, I want to make sure that we're clear on the types of imperial rule. First of all, we have number one, a protectorate. A protectorate are where local rulers are left in place but are to follow the advice of European advisors on issues such as trade or missionary activity. This is an opportunity for the Europeans to be involved in a country without ruling the country. However, the advisors, the European advisors, do expect the rulers to follow their advice, and if they don't, well, then they call home, and then the European country will likely send troops in to make sure that the European advisors' advice is followed. Okay, sphere of influence, somewhat similar to a protectorate. It's an area in which an outside power claims exclusive investment or trading privileges. In other words, this area only focuses and trades with whatever country has claimed it. Now, that doesn't mean there are the government is now under the control of the European power. It's not. Its only focus for the European power is trade or investment. Okay. 3 is called direct rule. This is typically what France did, and what they did is they sent officials in and soldiers from their country to administer the colony and to impose their culture on that colony. Meaning, for France, what they did was they sent French officials from the French government, and they ruled the country. Whatever country. For example, Vietnam was an example of this. The French came there, they ruled Vietnam, and imposed their culture, meaning, for example, part of their culture was language. The expectation for the Vietnamese was to speak French. And even today, there is a serious influence, serious French influence in their culture. Finally, indirect rule, which is Britain. And Britain, as I said, was the best at this, better than anybody else at doing this particular activity. All right, so they govern a colony through the use of the sultans, chiefs, or other local rulers. What they did was they kept the government in place, but Britain was still pretty much in control. They encouraged the children of the local ruling class to get an education in hopes that they would bond with Britain and make it easier to control whatever country they were in. And it did work to a small degree, but there is going to be an issue with the controlling classes that will encourage the controlling classes. These kids come back and they want their nation to be self-ruled, not ruled by Britain. So it works and it doesn't work. We'll go into more as we get into India. We'll talk more and more about this indirect rule. All right, nationalism. Now, I have to tell you, this is a video, and I've tried to do this once already, and it messed up my recording, so I'm going to leave this to you. So please follow my instructions here. You will want to go to YouTube and double-click on this address, highlight it, and copy. Then what you'll need to do is go to, let me show you this, you'll need to go to Moodle, and there you will find, well, it doesn't matter whether you go to Moodle or not, you just go to an internet and go to YouTube, place this address into the search bar, and watch this video. This video will actually give you the information for 9 and 10 for you to fill out. And so you need to do that, and we'll go over this in class. All right, so I'm going to move on to this. Okay, so at the height of the Ottoman Empire, that's what it says, at its height, the Ottoman Empire extended across the Middle East, North Africa, and southeastern Europe. And this is the picture I want you to be aware of. At one point, and if you see down here, we'll look at this one because it's 1830s through 1914, this whole area was controlled by the Ottomans. It's a large empire. But you can see as time progresses, as a result of the corruption and the influence by the Europeans, this empire begins to grow smaller and smaller until by 1914, this is all that's left of it. This area here and in through here. So imperialism and the Ottoman Empire. Well, you can already see imperialism affected the size of the empire. The Ottoman Empire faced internal decay as well as the foreign challenges. Corruption was widespread, and what we mean there is the officials of the Ottoman Empire were often very corrupt, meaning they were bad guys. They were, in some cases, thieves. They stole from the people. They would require huge bribes in order for anything to get done, and often then it didn't get done. And so there was a lot of problems within the government of the Ottoman Empire. Add to that, as we've already talked about, the Russians and the Germans and the British all sought to capitalize on the weakness of the Ottomans, making it even more difficult. And then you add in these nationalist revolts, especially in the Balkans and in Egypt, which threaten the empire. These are groups that want to be ruled. They don't want the Ottoman Empire to rule them, and they're doing everything they can to throw off the Ottoman Empire's control. And we're going to see, once the Ottoman Empire dissolves, these revolts, because the Europeans will have come in and taken control, these revolts will continue in an effort to get rid of the Europeans as well. All right, here's a pretty good picture of what I'm talking about. England or Great Britain here is after areas such as this. Germany focuses on these areas. Russia is after these areas. And all of which, as you can see from your key, is why this area grows smaller and smaller and smaller. Western imperialism placed a lot of pressure on the Muslim regions through diplomacy and military threats. Treaties are made with the European powers. And the issue is here that the Western countries are coming in and they're attempting through negotiation, through any means possible, to get a toehold into these countries. And what they're after are things like favorable trade, special rights for Europeans who might be living there, and then also the Europeans will do everything they can to protect whatever rights they do gain. And so these military threats become an issue that most of these countries who are not prepared to fend off the strong military might of these European countries pretty much capitulate and allow the Europeans to, well, maybe not allow them, but pretty much the Europeans are able to do whatever they want. All right, so as an example of some of the tensions that existed in the empire, the Ottoman Empire, was genocide, and genocide to the Armenians here. This down here, this, please watch this video in particular. If you watch this one, that's fine, but this video in particular I would like for you to watch. It's it's done by a young girl, probably a little older than you guys, but maybe like a senior in high school type age frame, and she tells her own story, her family's story, and it's excellent. So traditionally Ottomans were tolerant of minorities such as the Christian Armenians, but that changes. Nationalism led Muslim Turks, which is a group of Muslims who came to power, came to control the Ottoman Empire, accused the Armenians of aiding the Russians against the Ottomans. Between 600 and 1.5 million Armenians are killed as a result of this genocide. Many are slaughtered by the Sultan. The reason I put that there is for you to understand that the Sultan would be the government. He would be the man in charge. So he personally ordered these deaths. Now, you're going to see in this video where Turkey denies this ever happening. It denies that 600,000 to 1.5 million Armenians are dead. And yet, there's all kinds of evidence, primary evidence that this did happen. So watch that video. I think you'll be glad you did. It's very interesting. All right, let's talk about Egypt. Get this down here. Egypt. So, Egypt was an area controlled by the Ottomans, and they appointed a guy by the name of Muhammad Ali. Now, this is not the boxer, for those of you who know who he is. He was actually, our boxer, the American boxer, was actually named after this guy. So, he was appointed governor in the early 1800s, and he works to modernize Egypt because they all see what's happening. They see that the Europeans are coming. Fortunately, Muhammad Ali is able to do quite a bit, but Of course, he doesn't live forever. He dies, and Egypt comes increasingly under control of foreigners because the governors after Muhammad Ali just aren't able to keep up. They aren't able to keep the Europeans out of Egypt. One important set of circumstances was in 1858, a French entrepreneur by the name of Ferdinand de Lesseps organizes a company to build the Suez Canal. He is pretty successful, but it's an extremely expensive situation. And in order for Egypt to afford this, they go continually to England to borrow money. Unfortunately, it's so expensive, they eventually fall into such great debt that Britain takes control. The canal opens in 1869, and it's 100 miles long, and it cuts the distance between ships traveling from India to London by over 5,000 miles. That's a huge saving, especially for Britain, who has the strongest and best navy and merchant ships anywhere. And so for them, it makes perfect sense for them to eventually control this area and Egypt. The canal keeps Egypt at the crossroads of the world, which means Britain also gains not only in the increased wealth from shortening this distance, but also other ships need to use this canal. They gain from that wealth as well. Egypt sees very little of this. It goes pretty much to Britain. All right, finally then, we're going to talk about, in 1882, Egypt finally becomes a British protectorate, meaning Britain is now pretty much in control. And if you remember what a protectorate is, it really is expecting the advisors' advice to be followed. In theory, the governor was still an official of the Ottomans. However, in fact, he was pretty much expected to follow the policies that were dictated by Britain. Egypt does continue to modernize under British rule. They don't just sit back and do nothing. But nationalists, our discontent continues, meaning more and more the native people are wanting self-rule. Okay. So, pull this down so you can see it. This is an area we haven't talked much about. Persia will attempt to reform, but it was too late to be saved from the Western imperialism. Persia in particular is this area here. This is Saudi Arabia. This would be Egypt here. I'm sorry, I'm saying Egypt and I mean Israel. Israel right here. This is Turkey in this area right here. And what you're going to see here is the issue. This is known as Tehran, which is the capital of Iran. Iraq is in this area. Jordan. Much of this area is what we know as the Middle East today. So Russia wanted to protect its southern border, and Britain is interested in India, so they're looking very closely at this area. When oil is found, both gained concessions and then sent troops to protect these interests. Concessions are those things that allows Britain and Russia to be in Prussia and to do things like drill for oil. The thing is these troops were sent then to protect this oil from anybody else getting a hold of, including the people whose land it was on. So Prussian nationalists, of course, are split. They can't decide which they want. They desire to westernize, to be able to share in the wealth, and then others want to return to the Islamic law. And the interesting thing here is this Islamic law is exactly what is still going on today. Much of Al-Qaeda, the ISIS, are all saying that there must be a return to this Islamic law. And so this issue has not gone away over time. It has only become more and more of an issue. All right, so we are done. We have finished up with this. I hope you will complete this and upload I'm warning you right now, there will most likely be a quiz over this, so please be sure to get this done and upload as quickly as possible. All right, well, have a great weekend, and I will talk to you on Monday or Tuesday, whenever, whoever I see you then.